Hello there everyone, welcome to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you aren't. I am EDJ, and now we are continuing with Caesar's civil war with Pompey, next following with the battles of Ilerda and Massilia, whatever. Guys, if you followed me for a long time, you'll know that I can't pronounce anything, so yeah. Wait, I just want to make sure I'm in the right place. Okay. Yeah, the war begins. Okay, just making sure I'm keeping track with the playlist here. So, yes, the first start of the Civil War was not looking good for Pompey. He was dispersed. You know, he was kicked out of Italy. And yeah, now Caesar's dividing and conquering by taking out some of his best soldiers in Spain while Pompey isn't even there to lead them. So far things are looking, so far things are kind of, I can see things turning on Caesar's way, in his benefit. But then again, these Pompeian veterans are actually holding their own against Caesar, so it's not as easy as I think even Caesar thought it'd be. So I guess we'll see just how Caesar manages to turn this situation around, as he usually does. So I'm gonna put on my glasses. I was trying to keep the whole Roman thing going. I think you guys can forgive me for the glasses. So yeah, let's just get right to it. If you guys want to watch the original video without me pausing to talk or commenting, it is always down in the description down below. Without any further ado, we ought to get right into it. Let's watch these battles from Kings and Generals.
The first moves in the civil war between Caesar and Pompey were made. Italy is now under Caesar's control, while Pompey has retreated to Greece. Caesar decided to secure his western flank by destroying Pompeian legions in Spain, and that led to the battles around Ilerda. In this video we will conclude the Ilerdan campaign and the siege of Massilia, as Pompey's lieutenants attempt to stop Caesar's legions. Organizing stories can be hard, but it doesn't have to. Caesar's campaign in Spain seemed to be on the edge of disaster. He was stuck in the middle of enemy territory, cut off from his almost 6,000 auxiliary reinforcements and the precious supplies they were bringing, and was days from being starved out. If he was to reclaim the situation, Caesar would need to take control of the eastern bank of the river Sicoris and secure his supply line. With the bridges unable to be repaired due to high water and marauding Pompeian forces, Caesar came up with a different plan. He began construction of several small boats of the kind he had seen in Brittany, made of lightweight timber and animal hides. He then ordered a small detachment to take these boats by wagon at night almost 34 kilometers up the river. These men then crossed the river, fortifying a small hill, giving Caesar a small foothold on the eastern bank. Once this was established, a legion was sent from the main Caesarian camp up the river to construct a bridge from the western bank, while the initial detachment assisted from the eastern bank. Within days of beginning, they had the bridge constructed, providing a route between the eastern bank and—
Dang, that is genius. I'm loving this. Caesar's even using experience from his enemies in traditional Roman adaptation, learning from the Britons. Just wow, so the man is a genius. There is no debate. Julius Caesar is just a genius, man.
And Caesar's camp, stabilizing his supply line and allowing the reinforcements from Gaul to meet up with his legion encamped on the west side. With this influx of troops, particularly the prized Gallic cavalry, Caesar was finally able to harass Pompeian foraging parties on the eastern bank and begin to regain control of the situation. While the Ilerdan campaign was underway, the siege of Massilia was still being fought. For the most part, the siege had thus far been uneventful. Ahenobarbus had largely spent his time amassing a larger navy, and the Romans had been building siege equipment while Brutus's ships blockaded the port. But once his fleet was suitably built up, Ahenobarbus sailed his force out of harbour, hoping to break the blockade and thus bring supplies into the city. He had managed to put together a force of 17 warships, as well as several smaller vessels manned by archers, against Brutus's 12. The Massilian ships were also lighter and more navigable compared to the rather cumbersome ships that the legions had built. However, Brutus did have the advantage in quality of fighters. Ahenobarbus's men were largely farmers and local Massilians pressed into service alongside allied archers, while Brutus's ships were crewed by legionnaires who had specifically volunteered for the task. If Brutus could catch Ahenobarbus in close quarters fighting, the battle would be his.
So, yes, Brutus has the quality instead of the quantity in this battle, it seems. And yeah, it kind of reminds me of the first Punic War. If they could just get close enough to board, then yeah, it's game over, right? So, Ahenobarbus is the fellow from the last video who just ran up and got his soldiers, you know, captured by Caesar because he disobeyed Pompey. I think it's the same dude. I apologize. But, excuse me, I also apologize for that. But I just ate a bunch of pizza. But, yeah, it is the same guy from the last video that I don't really have a lot of confidence in Ahenobarbus. Though, we'll see if this surprises me. Let's see.
As the fleets met, the Massilians used their agility and range to their advantage, circling the Caesarian ships and peppering them with missiles, or sailing past to sweep Brutus's decks with arrows and smash his oars. But when the Massilians got too close in this manner, the legionnaires would throw across grappling hooks, pulling the Massilian ships close, holding them fast and boarding them.
Oh my goodness. Dude, those grappling hooks are OP. I did not know they had that. Wow. Okay, yeah, they've seemed to close the gap, which is really all that they needed. Oh my.
Situations, the legions had a clear advantage. Their heavy armor and training allowed them to cut through the Massilians on board, on occasion even boarding 2 Massilian ships at once, one on either side. Though Caesar notes the bravery of the Massilians, they were simply not equipped to fight hand-to-hand with legionnaires like this. The Massilians were forced back into port, having lost more than half their ships, and the blockade continued. This victory at Massilia coincided with a continuous change of fortune at Ilerda. With the new bridge completed, Caesar's superior Gallic horsemen were able to harass the Pompeian foragers.
Dude, those... You know what's really carrying Caesar's army from, I noticed, especially from like the Gallic Wars videos? His engineers, which can just build anything quickly, and also his Gallic cavalry, which carried a lot of the fights from, you know, the Gallic Wars. Like, these two things really make Caesar's army so powerful. And I have to say, the Caesarians seem to have, despite, I guess, technically being outnumbered by the greater grand scale of things, like, they're Caesar's seizing on the divide and conquering, but they also seem to just have, like, I don't know, like, I guess better discipline, I suppose, better, quality. They may not be, they might be outnumbered, but they're just superior, you know? I don't know. Then again, Pompey hasn't joined the fight yet, so we'll see if Pompey can turn things around.
And were even able to force them to resort to foraging at night. The odds were turning in Caesar's favour. As a result, numerous local tribes began supporting him with grain, as well as some more auxiliaries. Seeking to apply even more pressure to Afranius, he began construction of a number of ditches to divert the river Sicoris and create a ford close to his camp, which would allow even more of his men easy access to the eastern bank, rather than taking the circuitous route to the bridge up the river, thus completely removing the Pompeians' chances of foraging. Afranius recognized how precarious his situation was becoming. Running out of food, and with local tribes pledging allegiance to Caesar threatening to surround his position, he decided to make a tactical withdrawal to further Spain to continue the fight on his own terms with the advantage of Varro's 2 extra legions. Afranius ordered a few ships on the River Ebro to construct a pontoon bridge 30 miles to the south, providing an escape route. At the same time, Afranius ordered 2 legions across the stone bridge to the eastern bank, establishing a fortified position in preparation for the evacuation of the rest of the army. When Caesar learned of this, he saw his opportunity to catch Afranius. He ordered his men to work day and night on the riverworks, managing to lower the water level enough to move his cavalry across the Sicoris to try and harass the Pompeians. However, the Pompeian legions had been quick and were already dug in, leaving little for the cavalry to do. Afranius then moved his full force across the Sicoris into the new camp, leaving just 2 auxiliary cohorts to garrison Ilerda itself.
Explore the Fey Realm, the Shadow Realm, and even Hell itself.
In the early hours of the following morning, Afranius and Petreius began moving their entire army out of camp and to the south, heading towards the Ebro and the pontoon bridge. Caesar needed to act fast. If the Pompeians could reach the pontoon bridge, they would be able to escape to further Spain, merging with Varro's legions and prolonging the Spanish campaign. He first sent his cavalry to harass the Pompeians, attacking the rear of their column, slowing the Pompeian legions to a crawl as they fended off the attackers. Though the ford was not wholly completed, Caesar ordered pack animals to wade into the river to help slow the current and marched 5 of his legions across, leaving 1 to guard the camp.
Dang, Caesar is blitzing right now. And it makes sense, like obviously capturing these guys right now would end this, so that is good. Though we'll see how well it goes because there's still so much time left. You know, Euphranius, I think that's how you pronounce it. He's doing pretty well. I mean, granted, he is a man with like 30 years of experience in the military, so he's no slouch. But, you know, you're starting to see Caesar turn the tables. Because last video, he was doing incredibly well against Caesar. I was impressed. But now, Caesar, with his great ways of thinking, coming up with these ideas that I don't think anyone else would, with these pack animals in the building. Just like, Caesar is so... I think his greatest strength is his ability to find creative solutions out of problems, you know, to get out of problems. And it just amazes me every time. And as soon as he catches them, it seems like Caesar is almost invincible in pitched battles. So, I don't see things working out. I mean, I guess we'll see Euphranius how he does, but then again, you know, like, so far Caesar is just a beast in pitched battles, so we'll see.
Taking these legions, Caesar marched quickly to try and cut off his enemy's escape, and thanks to the harassment of the Caesarian cavalry, by mid-afternoon his army had caught up with the Pompeian legions. Both armies were now camped on the eastern bank, the Pompeians slightly further south than the Caesarians. Scouts for both sides reported that the only way south to the Ebro was through the mountain passes, just under 8 kilometers away. Whoever controlled these passes would easily be able to defend them from the other, and a brief standoff ensued. Afranius did not want to risk attempting to march his army through the narrow defiles with Caesar pursuing him, and Caesar did not want to try and force a way through the Pompeians to the mountains. Afranius did consider attempting a night march to the mountains, but decided that, with Caesar's cavalry patrolling the area at night, they would quickly be found out. Night battles were extremely risky and difficult, and so Afranius decided that it was better instead to attempt a fighting retreat the next day. Caesar, meanwhile, had also concocted a plan. At first light, he feigned a withdrawal to the Sicoris and Ilerda, then rapidly changed direction, marching quickly for the mountains. Seeing this maneuver, the Pompeians immediately broke camp, racing towards the mountain passes.
Caesar was like, I guess I'm going not. Oh man. But now he's just like, I'm just gonna book it. And we saw how fast Caesar moved last time, so his legions are booking it, like, man. So far, Caesar seems to have the speed advantage. Well, I guess we'll see how the Pompeians do, but I don't know. So far, Caesar has been blitzing, like, really fast.
The Caesarian route was a harder march, with the terrain slowing down the legions, but the Pompeian forces found themselves constantly harassed by...
Genius. Genius. Okay, so Caesar is putting his cavalry to work, while the main bulk of his army, seems his footmen, are going here. It's like they already I already said they had the speed advantage, but the fact that the terrain is difficult, and the fact that he left his Caesarian cavalry to harass them, he's about to catch them. Oh my goodness, genius.
Caesar's cavalry, and this proved once again to be the difference. Caesar reached the passes first, drawing his army into a line, cutting off the Pompeian escape. Afranius tried sending light auxiliaries to quickly seize high ground ahead of his main force, but the Caesarian cavalry was quickly able to surround them, and without support, they were easily cut down. With his opportunity to escape cut off, Afranius saw little choice but to encamp on a small hill and contemplate his next move. Caesar was happy to let him do so, and saw no point in risking the lives of his men in another battle. With the road south now blocked, it would only be a matter of time before Afranius ran out of food and water. The Pompeians could try and retreat back to Ilerda, but Caesar's legion left in the camp would be able to cross the ford and block the stone bridge, whilst Caesar's main force could attack them from behind. If the Pompeians stayed, they would eventually run out of supplies.
Man, Caesar has completely flipped the situation on the Pompeians. Last video, he was the one in dire straits. But now, like, yeah, the Pompeians are just completely, like, cut off. This is, man, genius, dude. I know I keep saying that and I apologize, but I just can't help but admire Caesar's military prowess. It's like, it's just another level, man.
If they retreated, they would be caught in a pincer. Caesar fortified his position, setting up outposts in the mountains, and awaited his enemy's next move. Afranius' priority was to secure his water supply. He had sent men to the river to gather water, but they had faced constant harassment.
Oh my goodness, dude. That cavalry is OP. He is putting them to work, man, but my goodness, they are OP.
From the Caesarian cavalry. In response, his legions had built a rampart from his camp to the river, allowing his men to collect water from behind the defences, bringing the fighting to a pause. As the Caesarian troops also came to the river for water, men from both sides began talking to each other. Caesar's legions contained many Iberians, and they began to ask the Pompeian legions about family, friends, and discuss the politics of the war. Old friends and acquaintances from both sides met, bringing them back to their camps to drink and reconnect. Some of Afranius' Spanish allies, and even some officers, went over to Caesar's camp to speak with Caesar personally. Caesar attributes these actions to his not having committed to a full-pitched battle the day.
Wow, so this could, like, turn... I mean, we'll see what comes of it, but yeah, this is very friendly and kind of civil. It reminds me of that one World War I story. I believe it was during Christmas, where armies from both sides, I think one was Germany. I don't remember the specifics of it, but I'm pretty sure you guys might catch on what I'm getting at. You know, where two sides of the army met up and just hung out, which is... I don't know, it kind of shines these little civil moments, and you know, war is obviously a very brutal and bloody affair, but sometimes you'll just have these, like, ceasefires, and you have to remember, these soldiers all the time are just people, you know, like, you know, I find a lot of soldiers fight mainly for, you know, the love of their country. That's usually the most I hear about why people join the military and all that. And but then again, it's just like, you know, the other side's also soldiers. It also helps that, you know, they're all Roman at the end, you know? So, yeah, it's just like, but also kind of makes it more tragic because you are fighting against your friends, aren't you? And killing your fellow people, which makes, I would imagine, makes it even harder. I mean, it gives opportunity like this, like, hey, you know, we're the same, but also in a weird way makes it even a bit more tragic because you are killing your own people. And yeah, civil wars are tough in regards to that. Like here in America, for instance, the American Civil War is still a very hot topic, you know, which is kind of the reason you know, I don't really like covering American history. I mean, obviously I'm familiar with it, and I kind of like covering history from other places of the world, but here the Civil War is still a very hot topic, and one you would have to like watch your words with, because there are people here in America, especially up in the South, who feel very strongly, you know, because like in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't been that long since the American Civil War, and you know, there are still descendants from the soldiers and the men who fought still kind of around, and you know, who could trace themselves back. So it's still, even here, it's still an event that rings very powerfully, and one that if I were to ever cover, I would have to watch my words very carefully. But, you know, that's here in America, and I'm pretty sure it might be the same anywhere else. And, you know, it's just a heavy thing. I don't know why I mumbled. I'm so sorry. I don't know where I was getting with all that. But, overall, yeah, I don't know. This seems like a very civil, kind of cool moment in the midst of all this blood and, you know, chaos, right?
Prior, and that the Pompeians saw this as an act of leniency. While this might be true to an extent, the main motivator was more likely that the Pompeian forces understood the situation they were in, that it was only a matter of time before they would be starved into defeat and were losing the will to fight. Afranius did little to quell such stirrings. It seems that he too had lost the desire to continue the battle. Petreius, however, had not. To restore discipline in the camp, he demanded oaths of loyalty from Afranius and the entire army, and then ordered any Caesarian soldier found in the camp to be executed. There had been a brief moment of peace in the chaos of the civil war, where men who just the day before had been fighting each other had come together in peace. But now the peace was broken. The soldiers returned to their respective camps and prepared once again for battle.
Man, like I said, a very small, brief civil moment before it all goes back. Yeah, for a second there, it almost seemed like they were gonna jump ship, right? Or at least gracefully surrender, but no, the fight continues.
Become the master of the air, the thunder of the seas, or a tank fury in the epic multiplayer action game War Thunder.
In a last-ditch attempt to retake control of the situation, Petreius attempted to retreat back to Ilerda. The entire way, the Pompeians were harassed by Caesar's cavalry and shadowed by his legions, blocking them from crossing the Sicoris at every turn and slowing them down to a grueling pace. On the third day of this harassment, the Pompeians were forced to set up camp on unfavorable terrain. Caesar saw his opportunity and began work on his own earthworks surrounding the Pompeian camp, a similar tactic to Alesia, cutting off any possibility of foraging. Blockaded on all sides, devoid of water, and having been harassed for days, the Pompeians finally sued for peace. Caesar, never one to miss out on a public relations opportunity, promised leniency for all the men and officers, including Afranius and Petreius, in exchange for the complete surrender of the army and the promise that none of them would take up arms against him. The Pompeians gratefully accepted.
Yeah, thank goodness, because we don't need another Alesia. The first one was awful. Like, that was a brutal conflict. So, yeah, surrender really was the only option. They were done. Like, fighting would have just been suicide at that point, right? So, Yeah, sometimes you're just gonna know when to call it quits, right? So, in war... Yeah.
With the surrender of this main Pompeian army, Caesar assigned 4 legions, the 6th, 9th, 11th and 14th, to accompany the Pompeians to a safe location and disband them, before heading back to Italy. Caesar meanwhile took the 10th and 7th into further Spain to confront Varro. Varro, who had initially been encouraged by the early reports of Afranius' success at Ilerda, had been gathering more forces, raising another 2 legions, giving him a total of 4. When news came to him of Caesar's victory at Ilerda, he began to march 2 legions to Gades, where he planned to hold out and prolong Caesar's war in Spain. However, news of Caesar's victory at Ilerda had spread fast, and the locals had seen the writing on the wall. The chiefs of local tribes met Caesar at Corduba and pledged allegiance to him, and the chief of the Gades closed the gates of the city to Varro. To make
Sorry, I was thinking of the Eric Andre meme. Let me in! Let me in! But dang, Caesar has just blitzed, and he mentioned last video these were like some of Pompey's best men. And, you know, obviously they're not slouches, they have their experience, but man, if Pompey had been there, right? Like Caesar said last video, I'm about to face an army without a leader. So I almost wonder, yeah, his divide and conquer strategy is just working flawlessly so far. Pompey is going to have to really salvage the situation, like, really hard right now.
To make matters worse, one of Varro's legions that was with him mutinied, striking their colours. Having lost the support of his army and the locals, Varro sent word to Caesar that he was ready to surrender. Cassius Longinus was assigned as governor of Spain by Caesar and assumed command of Varro's 4 legions, making them the 21st, 22nd, 23rd and 24th. Pompey's entire Spanish army had now either been disbanded or had sided with Caesar after just a couple of months. Taking his 2 veteran legions, the 7th and 10th, Caesar left Hispania to rejoin his forces at Massilia.
Dude, Pompey is taking a lot of L's right now. Dang.
The siege of Massilia was still ongoing. Trebonius, who had been left in command of the legions during the siege, had constructed trenches, walls and towers blocking off the peninsula upon which the city stood. Brutus maintained the blockade from the sea, so together they effectively surrounded Massilia. The city would not be easy to take though. Its position was ideal for defense, funneling any land forces onto one front, and the city was protected by high, strong walls topped with ballistae. Trebonius had ordered the construction of a siege ramp as well as a battering ram, but the Massilian ballistae and numerous sorties had been effective in slowing the Romans' construction of their engines and had, so far, dissuaded any serious assault on the city's walls. The Massilians had also made repairs to their fleet following their previous defeat, bringing the number of warships back up to 17. However, most of these ships were refitted merchant vessels or old warships crewed by lightly armed archers. The Massilians simply could not afford to move their best infantry from the walls to the ships. Fortunately for them, however, Pompey had sent a fleet of 16 ships to reinforce them. These were commanded by Lucius Nasidius, and though were mostly hastily built smaller ships, some had bronze rams, presenting a serious threat to Brutus's navy. A small vessel was sent to the Massilians to alert them of the coming reinforcements, and Ahenobarbus seized the opportunity. Sending the Massilian navy out, they slipped Brutus's blockade and met Nasidius's fleet at Taurois, just down the coast from Massilia. Brutus too had increased the size of his fleet, having captured 6 ships in the previous battle and manned them with legionnaires. Although outnumbered almost 2-1 by the combined navies of Nasidius and the Massilians, Brutus had the distinct advantage in quality when it came to hand-to-hand fighting. Buoyed by his previous victory,
Yeah, just like I said, quality over quantity, right?
Brutus gave chase and set sail for Taurois. The Massilian ships were stationed on the right, with Nasidius and his fleet on the left. Knowing that the Massilians would favour a missile battle, Brutus determined that it would be best to engage the Massilians first, catching them in close quarters before facing Nasidius' ships. He therefore determined to focus almost all his ships on the Massilians. As they had done previously, the Massilians attempted to use their agility and superior seamanship to outmaneuver and separate Brutus's ships. This was an effective tactic, and when they could separate a Caesarian ship, they would pepper it with javelins and arrows, inflicting numerous casualties. However, once again, whenever they drifted too close, Brutus's men would cast their grappling hooks, pulling their foes close and boarding them. Once boarded, despite the bravery and determination of the Massilians and their allies, they were simply outclassed by Roman discipline and weaponry and were butchered on the decks. In a frantic attempt to win the engagement in one decisive move, the Massilians targeted Brutus's own ship, distinguished by its standard. 2 Massilian ships attempted to ram the ship from either side, catching Brutus in a pincer. Just as they closed in though, Brutus's ship darted forward, the 2 Massilian vessels colliding into each other head-on. Now disabled, they made easy prey for Brutus's ships, who quickly set on them, sinking them both. It was at this—
Dang. I love seeing naval warfare in action, because like I said, I'm not really well versed at all with naval warfare, though, man, this is cool. Also, it's kind of hilarious, just rammed each other. Kind of like bulls running to each other. I don't know, that was a little funny. Dang, man. Brutus is doing incredibly well, man. Like, really great.
This point that Nasidius abandoned the battle, taking his entire fleet with him. Seeing there was no chance of victory, the Massilians quickly followed suit. Brutus had won without losing a single ship and sustaining only light casualties, while the
Oh my goodness, Brutus. Dang. Oh my goodness, that is amazing. Not one ship lost. Dude, that's amazing.
Massilians lost a total of 9 ships, 5 sunk and 4 captured. It is unknown why Nasidius did not commit his men. Caesar blames it on cowardice. However, given that he and the fleet sailed to Spain immediately following the battle, it is possible that Nasidius, upon seeing the Massilians being decimated by Brutus's men, thought it better to pick a later engagement where the odds would be more in his favour. Whatever the reason, he had not lost a man, never having engaged in the battle. The remainder of the Massilian fleet limped back to its home port and would not emerge from it again. Caesar was consistently complimentary of the Massilians who manned their ships, most only being citizens wanting to fight for their city, and he admired their bravery and determination. Against the skill and heavy arms of Roman legionnaires, however, they simply did not stand a chance. With the naval battle won, the Romans turned in earnest to the land assault. A way was needed to assault the walls without risk of missile fire, and without risk of the siege engines being burnt during a sortie. As such, Trebonius began work on a huge tower. The tower was 9 meters each way, with walls almost 2 meters thick of brick and clay. The Romans built the first layer of this tower, topping it with a lid with long screens attached to the sides. They then used screws and levers to raise this lid, the screens hanging down to cover the gap between lid and wall, and would then build the wall up to the height of the lid. They continued this process until the tower was 6 stories, building in shooting platforms for archers and ballistae as they did, allowing their men to fire down on the enemies on the wall. With this—
Dang, this engineer work is another level, dude. Like, man, the way from this entire series, the Roman engineers have just been constructing these things, I'm just amazed, man. Like, it really is a wonder to behold, man.
Is completed, Trebonius's men next began work on a 20-meter long gallery, starting from the base of the tower, which provided protection. In effect, this was almost like a huge covered sledge. It could be pushed forward and backward, and was topped by a sloped roof covered in tiles and clay to prevent it being burnt down. When it was completed, it was pushed forward from the base of the Roman tower to the base of a tower in the Massilian wall. Under this protection, legionary engineers began the work of undermining the Massilian tower, removing bricks with crowbar and chisel. The Massilians attempted to throw rocks and pitch down onto the engineers, but the Roman defences proved sturdy and the men were protected. In due time, the undermining began to pay off. The Massilian wall began to crumble and tilt. The Massilians quickly came out of the city. They acknowledged that Trebonius had now won the siege, realizing that as soon as their tower collapsed, the legions would flood the city. They requested a truce, asking if they could await Caesar's arrival to negotiate with him personally. Trebonius, seeing little reason in risking his men's life, accepted, and the legions pulled back from the walls to wait for Caesar. But the Massilians were bluffing. Once the Romans' guard was down, they sallied out at night, burning down the Roman siege ramp and battering ram.
Oh my goodness. Yo, you Massilians, they were being pretty generous with you guys. Like, Caesar probably would have spared. And then again, you never know. But I think there was a good chance Caesar might have spared them. Or, you know, if they had just surrendered now and, you know, given up. But now they've just certainly have sealed their fate of being massacred. Oh, dang, man. That's very underhanded. That was a very underhanded tactic right there. I'm kind of shocked.
Though Trebonius and his men quickly caught on to what was happening and tried to fight back the sortie, missiles from the Massilian walls prevented them from doing so effectively. The Massilians were even able to set fire to the Roman tower from the inside, as well as the gallery, destroying months of work in a single night. However, this was only a small success for the Massilians. The siege had been going on now for 4.5 months. With their navy destroyed, they had no means of bringing in fresh supplies into the city. The supplies they did have were running low, and disease had begun to spread among the populace. Moreover, the Romans had once again started constructing siege works, this time building a gallery extending to the walls made of brick. To make matters worse, Caesar arrived with his 2 extra legions. His arrival also made it clear to the Massilians that Spain had indeed fallen to Caesar, and they would not be receiving any reinforcements or supplies. Diseased, starved, and now horrifically outnumbered, the Massilians finally surrendered. Just before they did, however, Ahenobarbus escaped. He was still not ready to give up the fight, and commandeering 3 ships, made a daring dash past Brutus's blockade during a storm. Brutus's ships pursued, catching 2, but the one Ahenobarbus was on slipped away in the storm. He would live to fight another day. Caesar left the 18th and 19th legions to garrison the city, while he marched to Italy with the 5th, 7th and 10th to rejoin his main army. In 7 months, Caesar had chased Pompey from Italy, secured his western flank, disbanded 5 of Pompey's legions, and absorbed a further 4.
Yeah, Caesar has completely dominated Pompey in every single way right now. In 7 months, that is impressive. Not even a year. And now look at him, he has Gaul, Spain, and Italy. Dude, Pompey, man. You're getting thrashed. Oh my goodness.
So far, the war was going very much in Caesar's favour. But this was still just the start. Ahenobarbus had managed to escape to Greece to rejoin Pompey, and was soon followed by Varro, Afranius and Petreius, despite the latter two's oath to Caesar. Pompey was amassing a vast army in Greece, and he still held the lucrative territories in the east, as well as the important grain hub of North Africa. The war in the west might have been over for now, but the war for the rest of the Roman world was about to begin, so make sure you are subscribed to our channel and have pressed the bell button.
Beyond impressed. Caesar so far has just been dominating. His masterful way of turning a bad situation into good never ceases to amaze me. He has taken Spain. Where is he gonna strike next? I assume the grain, right? I mean, Africa's pretty close, but I guess we'll find out next time. But dang, dude, Pompeii, man. You're gonna have to step up your game, bro. Caesar is, like, dominating you, bro. But I'm really looking forward. I'm about to jump to the next video, guys. So I just can't wait. I'm trying to binge through all of this. Maybe not in a day, that's probably insane, but I am trying to rush through this, mainly just because I can't get enough, you know, I'm like invested. So, yeah, I'll be seeing you guys later. Bye, everyone.